Yeah. Well, how is Shotgun Justice doing for you? Are you selling as much as you want to? Are you getting as much media airplay?
Okay, airplay, we could always use more.
Yeah.
In terms of sales in Canada, it's doing better than even our last album, Violent Restitution.
Oh, great.
Which is good news, and I think it's helped in part by the tour we just did and the video that's been getting some play on Much Music. I think that's helped, but in terms of the United States and Europe, it's about the same. It's doing about the same as the last album did, and that's probably because of a lack of exposure in Europe and in the States.
Do you think that has anything to do with maybe the new lineup, and how's that working out now?
Okay, I don't think it has anything to do with the new lineup. Well, I give the credit to them, obviously. I think I've got an excellent lineup in terms of musicians and attitude. They're working out great. We all like the same kind of music. Musical differences aren't there at all anymore. And, you know, we've been together for 3 years as the new lineup anyway, and working out really well.
Well, a lot of the bands that we see here have gone out and deserted their roots, so to speak. I know we were talking about that before. How do you feel about cover bands, and what's your angle on what they're trying to approach and how they're going about it?
Okay, I guess this is a foregone conclusion. I'm not really keen on cover bands, but I understand where they're coming from. There's some musicians who, I guess for some reason, are insecure or don't feel that they have the ability to write their own music. And as a result, they still want a gig and they want to impress people and they want to, make money. And there's money to be made as a AC/DC tribute band or as a Led Zeppelin tribute band. And I think a lot of musicians wouldn't be working if they didn't have that kind of thing. So I can understand their point. It's not something I would get involved in, but that could always change. If I was destitute, maybe I would. I don't know.
Well, with yourself being so totally original and very heavy, is it hard for you guys to get band dates?
No, not really. It isn't hard to get dates. Sometimes it's hard to get the amount of money we want. That could be the biggest problem.
Yeah.
I guess get the fee we want.
I've never gotten the amount of money I want.
It's not really hard to get dates. Some cities it is, but really, if I was to say, well, I'm going to put together a string of dates, I'm pretty confident I can always do that. It's just a matter of, sometimes some dates will fall through because the promoter either didn't have good intentions in the first place, or he, refused to pay what we felt we were worth at the time.
Well, through your years of touring and everything you've done, I know you've played a lot of shows with a lot of people. Who would you say was probably the best band to play with, besides, as in a double bill or a triple bill or something?
Okay, well, in terms of fun, definitely the best band to play with was Sacrifice. We just did that cross-Canada tour with them and finished up in November. Had a lot of fun to party with and hang around with, and a couple of shows we played with them, we even got up on stage and jammed and stuff like that. So really loose guys. We've played some shows with bands like Motorhead and Slayer and stuff like that, and we certainly enjoyed those, mainly because we look up to those guys, and we were pretty impressed with Lemmy's attitude. He's really a nice guy, and you could expect that because he's been around.
Yeah.
He might be a bit arrogant, but
you don't hang around since '68 if you haven't got your head together.
No, he's really friendly. Yeah.
What do you think of the music scene now for heavy bands now in Canada? How do you feel? Do you think it's come a long way since the days of Armed and Dangerous and when Sacrifice formed? And
well, it's certainly matured a bit, I guess. Seems that most bands that come out now are more concerned with being better than what used to be. Like maybe 5 years ago, again, a lot of death metal bands would come out and half of them couldn't play, and you get this explosion of basically, just noise, and they pick up some small following or something like that. But now it seems like most bands, before they want to even debut to the public, they want to be good and they want to impress you right away. So I guess there's a move towards more quality music.
Because of the industry in Canada, the music industry itself, and the way it's been treated with free trade, and the way that your music's being treated in the industry, have you ever really gave a lot of thought to moving south of the border?
We thought about it maybe 2 or 3 times seriously over the last 8 years, and came to the same conclusion every time. It's the competition is tough in Canada. It's also tough in the U.S. In terms of the free trade deal, actually helps us. to export our records and our merchandise. And it's easier when we cross the border to bring our stuff across. They're not the least concerned. We don't get charged duties or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually been a bit of a bonus to us, although...
I think a lot of it would hit more people with airplay, and when it comes time that people are getting signed and they don't have to supposedly sign as many bands in their Canadian, say the big record companies like that, they're not going to be able to sign as many acts in Canada because they're not going to have the necessity to do so by the government. Now, how do you feel about that?
Well, I would say that one of the major problems between being Canadian and American is the fact that the head offices of all the bigger record companies are in the U.S., and a lot of these Canadian major labels like Warner Brothers and EMI, etc., they're run in New York and Los Angeles, and they make the decisions there. And a lot of these Canadian labels, for example, we were discussing with MCA Canada last year, actually late '89, the possibility of putting a deal together, and they were interested. And then they weren't able to do it because their parent company in the U.S. wasn't willing to allot them the money to do it. And, that kind of created a problem for us. But if we had gone to MCA in the States, I don't know that they would have signed us anyway. So I don't know if it's such a disadvantage that we're Canadian. I just think that the U.S. is running the show,
Yeah. Well, I noticed, Dave, that your guitar playing has gotten more fierce, almost like an angry sound. Is that due towards any attitude you might have towards the industry?
Well, I would say that the main reason it's that way is because of the lyrics and the music on the new album. The music, of course, is just as angry as the lyrics, and that's the attitude. We're trying to make the lyrics fit the music. It has to make sense. The music is supposed to be the musical interpretation of what we're saying. So that might be why it sounds that way.
Well, like with American Luck, that's a song about basically being really peeved off with how things are going, living in Canada and being a hard band and heavy band.
Well, the truth of the matter is like I said before, a lot of bands are getting signed in the States, and a lot of bad bands are getting signed. But then again, I think they're going to be gone in a couple of years, and there'll be a whole bunch of new upstarts in a few years. And the main thing I was talking about American Luck is that it seems like you can put a band together in 10 minutes, and you've got some interest somewhere. I mean, great example, on this tour we played some U.S. cities with Sacrifice. We played Cleveland and Buffalo and a few others. And every show we played in the States, and we didn't have this happen once in Canada, there were about 4 bands opening for us, all death metal bands, all sounded the same. And basically, as far as I was concerned, they were all terrible, and yet they all had their fans. And it seems like in the U.S. there's that movement where even garbage will sell just because it does. There's enough people out in the United States that you're going to find some fans somewhere.
That's right.
Well, are you working towards or progressing towards a certain sound now? A different, maybe something for the future with Razor? Is there an angle that you're going to be at? That you're working towards, or are you just going to kind of plug ahead with what you've been doing?
We're going to change a bit, not much. The new album is already written, and it's very much the kind of album that a guy who bought Shotgun Justice is going to like, and the guy who bought Violent Restitution is going to like. It's really heavy, and the songs are still in the 2 to 3 minute range for the most part, and there's a lot of songs. But lyrically, we're trying to inject a lot of humor into our lyrics now, and that would be the biggest change, I think, is that we're trying to put a strong sense of humor across on the new album, and still try to say some relevant things while we're at it. I can't say much more than that at this point.
Well, with the next album coming out, is there any goals you'd like to achieve that you've been thinking of in the last 8 years that you'd like to do in the near future?
World peace or something?
No, I'm not trying to save the world or anything, but what we do want to do, I think, is the people who are already into the band, and that's the key. It's to those people that we're really addressing the album. We just want to let them know that we consider ourselves to be pure entertainment, not to take us too seriously. And that's kind of why we're loosening up the lyrics a bit on the next album. We're just trying to avoid people thinking we're actually a bunch of Charles Bronson vigilante maniacs who trying to use our music to incite the world to violence,
kill themselves. Yeah. Well, Fringe Records, as well as your own label, Fist Fight, own and distribute your records. How has that arrangement worked, and what would you like to do in the future with that?
Okay, well, the arrangement's worked pretty well since 1987. We've been dealing with Fringe in terms of licensing our album to them, and then they, of course, do the same to the rest of the world. It's great in terms of the amount of money we've received. They treat us really well in that regard. What suffers is the amount of promotion that is done as a result. It's sort of this kind of a deal. It's a rarity. They say, we'll give you this much money, which is usually a pretty comfortable sum, and basically you have to promote yourselves with that money as well as record an album. It leaves us in a position where, if we're going to be touring, then that's the only promo we can do. You won't see any advertisements for our albums in magazines.
Or stores.
Yeah. What we do is we try to distribute a lot of promo copies of our albums and, do as many interviews as we can and that kind of thing to try and reach people.
Yeah.
And our video, of course, too.
Dave, what are you doing for management now?
Well, we're still self-managed. We've had offers over the years. A couple of years ago, we were having a hard time finding anybody, and we were looking. We've been on a constant search. Now we've had offers in the last couple of years, especially on this tour. We got offers. The bottom line is we asked ourselves this question: is there anybody out there who can do any better a job with the band than we've done ourselves? And at this point, we don't think so. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. You have worked very hard as a band. Is there anything you can advise other bands that are struggling really hard?
My advice to them is please yourself first, only because it is a lot tougher to break into the scene now. You can get your half a paragraph in Meat magazine no matter what, but if you really want to get a following, you need to gig a lot, and you need to go all out on a promotional effort, and it's going to cost you some money in your pocket to try and do it. But I would say that please yourself musically first, because that way at least you like what you're doing, and as long as you're comfortable with what you're doing, then nothing you're doing is a failure.
Yeah. Promotion is the key to everything nowadays.
Sure. Speaking of shows and everything, I was just wondering, what do you have coming up? Are you doing any all ages shows? Are you going to be playing bars? And what's your preference?
Okay, well, our preference depends on city to city. For example, all ages shows do really well for some reason in Southern Ontario, and it seems to be a better way to go. Whenever we throw off an all age show in Southern Ontario, it's a lot more successful. For example, in Kitchener, we used to play the Coronet in 1985-86, 100 people would show up. Okay, wasn't really a great thing. We throw off a few all ages shows and we get a couple of hundred, and it just seems to be better in this area to do that. Same thing in Toronto and all of Southern Ontario. Whereas in Quebec, if you go into a bar, it's always packed, and people are always pretty rabid, and it just seems to be. It's a lot of fun to play in a Quebec bar. Yeah, it's true. And the bars close at 3 o'clock, so you're just cranking at 2 in the morning. You're having a great time, and so is everybody else, and it seems to be a fun thing to do there.
Do you find all ages shows more fun than playing a bar?
Well, I do when the crowd's into it, and if I sell a lot of merchandise, then I have even more fun. But it depends. Sometimes a bar full of drunk people getting right into it can be fun too. So.
Well,
but they shouldn't drive.
They shouldn't drive. They should definitely not drive. We're not really subjected to much PMRC censorship here. What would you do if you learned that kids who wanted your record couldn't get it because of that?
Okay, well, I think that kids will always find a way to get your record if they really want it. And I think if something like that were to happen, somebody was to banning my album and taking it off the market, certainly they wouldn't be able to get it. But I mean, if it was stickered, I'm sure that there's a million angles around it. It's like the old let's get my big brother to buy me a case of beer routine. They're going to go get the album, and whoever wants it's going to get it. So that'll just help.
Well, I think what it comes down to is if someone's going to walk in your store wanting a Razor album, they're going to buy a Razor album regardless of what's put on it.
Sure, as long as they can. I mean, if there was some restriction where if you had to be 18 or older, like I say, they'll get somebody else to get it for them anyway. They're still going to get it, and it's absolutely idiotic to think that you can keep things like lyrics or words from people. They're going to hear them, and to people who are concerned about that kind of thing, I just say, well, go to a high school and spend a day there and hear the kind of language you hear. Go to a grade school and hear the kind of language you hear, and you're going to be shocked, and it's pathetic that you're talking about records.